You asked for it, so here it is. The BMW 330e. It's a very interesting car, this, and also quite complex. And today we are going to figure it out. But not only that, we are going to do a 0 to 60, a 30 to 70, see what MPG it will really do. Newsflash, it's not 141 miles per gallon. And of course, see how fun it is to drive. So let's get into it. My name's Tom, and you are watching Paragon Cars. Let's go. Right, let's start with the most complex bit first, and that is the powertrain. Under the bonnet of this thing, we have the inline 4-cylinder turbo B48. In this car, it's exactly the same as the BMW 320i, which means it's got 184 horsepower and 300 newton meters of torque. But of course, this is the E, which means we have an electric motor somewhere in there. And that puts out a further 113 horsepower and 265 newton meters of torque, which means under extra boost, you have 292 horsepower and 420 newton meters of torque. But hang on a minute, those torque figures don't add up. And that's because the electric motor's peak torque comes in much sooner than the engine's peak torque, so the actual peak torque is still 420 newton meters. They just make it at different parts of the power range. Fundamentally though, that should make this thing pretty fast. Just how fast? Let's find out and do the 30 to 70 sprint. Okay, so this thing is genuinely quite fast. We did a time of 4.90 seconds, which, if you look at our leaderboard, will show you that this is basically as fast as a Porsche Macan S petrol, a car with 354 horsepower, and in fact, it's faster than a car with the legendary B58 engine. Yes, it's faster than the BMW X640i, and yes, I know that's a heavy car, but it does have 340 horsepower still, and it's faster than a Stage 1 Ford Fiesta ST as well. I was not expecting this thing to be that quick. The engine out of a 320i plus some electricity is apparently a very good combination. Now then, we've all seen the interior of a BMW 3 Series before. However, this 330e has a couple of different buttons inside that we shall go through now. Normally, you would have adaptive, comfort and sport here, but in this 330e, you have adaptive electric, which is electric mode only, hybrid, which is obviously a hybrid mode, and sport mode, which puts you in the sportiest possible setting, which means the engine can charge the battery and you get that full 292 horsepower for up to 10 seconds. Of course, the dash is also slightly different. Not only do we have this little eDrive logo here, you have a little indicator for how much charge you have. And newsflash, if you don't plug this thing in, you will run out of battery in it. Hence the reason I've put this thing in sports mode to charge the battery. The other big difference with the interior of this car is back here in the boot. You see, those batteries have to go somewhere, and BMW, being BMW, said, well, the car has to maintain a 50-50 weight distribution, or as close to that as possible, so we're going to chuck all the batteries in the boot, which unfortunately means you get 100 litres less space, because this is a 12 kilowatt hour battery with 9 kilowatts usable, which means you should get around 35 miles of electric only range. So if you have a charger at home, you can actually commute to work and back without using the engine at all. Very environmentally friendly. Anyway, enough jibber jabber, let's get this thing on the road and see how it drives. Does the extra weight of the batteries ruin this lovely chassis? Let's find out. Okay, so obviously the first thing you notice about the 330e is just how smooth it is. You get the benefit of that EV powertrain, which means when you're driving around town, there is no engine. It's typical go away BMW gesture control. Too expressive with my hands. But yes, you get the benefit of an EV powertrain, which makes it lovely and smooth. Then over bumps, perceivably, to me at least, I can't really feel a difference compared to something like a 330i. We do have the adaptive dampers, so obviously BMW have calibrated them for the weight of the car. And yeah, it's a really nice thing to drive around in. Still feels nice and sporty. Steering's light in hybrid / comfort mode. And It's actually better than a regular 330i, I would say, because you're obviously not waiting for a gearbox. And as good as the ZF 8-speed gearbox is, it can get a little bit caught up sometimes, and it can hesitate at junctions, especially if you don't come to a complete stop at one. Whereas this, I mean, just driving around town, give it a little gas. Engine comes on straight away because obviously it's using that EV powertrain to start you up. Now then, coming out of junctions, you can get an X-Drive version of this, which is actually the one I would recommend. But this is just the rear-wheel drive version, and yeah, you get quite a bit of slip at the rear, purely because you have electric power, which is very torquey, and engine power all suddenly coming in at once. But it makes for a lot of fun, which I'll show you later. Now then, in terms of MPG, I haven't charged the battery of this that much, so we've only actually got 3 miles of electric only range. So we are going to test what MPG it does today, but it's not going to be a super accurate figure. I can give you an example of an accurate figure though, and it's actually surprisingly impressive. In the intro, when I said it wouldn't do 141 MPG, I was kind of referring to the fact I hadn't charged this particular car, but I have seen people that have done nearly 1,500 miles to a single tank of fuel. And that's not because the fuel tank is massive, that's because people can charge the car at home. And when they charge it at home, they get 35 miles of range. They then do their 14-mile commute to and from work, 28 miles in a day, and then they plug it back in again at home. So they're basically never using the fuel. And that's including motorway journeys as well, because in hybrid mode, this will go up to about 68 miles an hour before it kicks the engine on. But if you press the electric only mode, if you've got a load of charge in your battery, this will actually do up to 87 miles an hour in electric only mode, which is very good for a mild plug-in hybrid. But yeah, I mean, the main benefit for me is just the smoothness, pulling away from the lights. You're always first to pull away, and you never miss a gap in traffic. When you're joining onto the motorway, you literally just tickle the throttle, and the electric motor has just enough torque that it kind of gives you a nice shove, which is exactly what you want. You're not waiting for a turbo to kick in, and you're not waiting for the gearbox really to kick down. Now, the interesting thing about this powertrain is that the electric motor actually uses the gears in the car, so it does feel a little bit weird, but it's kind of imperceivable, at least, which is quite strange. Sometimes you do notice it kind of like feeling like it's changing gear, which I assume is what it's doing, but it's really hard to notice. Okay then, right, sports mode, we have extra boost, which takes us from 250-ish horsepower to 292 horsepower for 10 seconds. Then I can turn traction control off, whack the gearbox over into sports mode, and go for manual gears, because the ZF 8-speed is a fantastic gearbox to control yourself. Steering becomes a little bit sharper, a bit heavier, and of course those adaptive dampers become even stiffer. What on earth is this person doing? They have clearly gotten confused. Standard Watford driving. What are they doing? Completely lost. We're going to let them sort themselves out, and then into the roundabout, I think. Give everyone a bit of room. Right, okay, foot down. Yep, it gets very sideways very quickly. And my lord, the performance is definitely there. This might be the engine out of a 320i, but with this electric motor, it feels not far off of an M340i, to be honest. Obviously, you get loads of low-down torque, which is why it feels so quick. And as you can see, the dash will go blue as well, telling you you're using the e-boost. Coming onto the motorway, let's see how this powertrain reacts when I put my foot down. Just in hybrid mode, which is the mode you're going to be using most of the time. A little bit of lag from the engine, but the electric motor comes in straight away, which is nice. And yeah, I mean, it gets up to 70 very quickly, even when the battery is low on range, which is very nice. Now the thing with this is, obviously this is a 12 kilowatt hour battery with 9 kilowatt hours usable, but even though it says it's low, there's still quite a bit left in the tank. So when you do put your foot down, you're always going to get that extra boost of 292 horsepower, or at least you're going to get the 250 horsepower, which is very nice. Then once on the motorway, we've got cruise control, back it on 70, very comfortable, very quiet. And the one thing that is nice is that there's enough sound deadening between you and the engine that you get a little bit of exhaust note, but you don't get the engine kind of firing into life when you put your foot down coming onto the motorway. Talking about that, actually, the only thing that I am not so keen on with these hybrids is they're very aggressive with the engine. And what I mean by that is that when you put your foot down, in a normal car, the engine's usually had about 10 minutes to kind of warm up a bit. Whereas in a plug-in hybrid, you're kind of putting your foot down from cold, and the engine's still very tight because it's cold. And you're putting a lot of strain on it when it's cold, which I kind of don't really like because I have a lot of mechanical sympathy. I know the engineers kind of try and engineer it out of the engines, but still makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So if you ever buy one of these, I would still recommend to get your oil changed a little bit more frequently than the car would suggest. You know, I'm talking kind of like 6,000 to 8,000 miles rather than 10 to 12,000 miles. Anyway, in terms of, you know, just motorway driving, it's nice and quiet. There's really nothing to complain about at all, really. Wind noise is low, and it's comfortable. But what MPG will it do when the battery doesn't really have any charge in it? Well, let's find out. Okay, so this is surprising. Usually when hybrids haven't been plugged in, their MPG absolutely plummets. And obviously this hasn't done over 100 miles per gallon, but we've still done 46 MPG in traffic, which is pretty surprising to me. That's still a really good number. And I think that's actually the best figure we've ever had on our short 14-mile commute. So, yeah, I suppose well done BMW. The 330 is still an efficient car, even when you don't plug it in. And when you whack it in sports mode, you get extra boost, which gives you a lot of power. We are going to do a 0 to 60 in a minute, but first let's get the traction control off and see if we can have any fun in this thing, shall we? Okay, let's see what we can do. Bit of slip from the rear there. And even with low battery, it still performs really well. Still giving me the e-boost, which is what you want. The thing that's surprising me the most, though, is just you can only really feel the extra weight under braking. It's just that initial bite feels slightly subdued. Right, what kind of sound do we get? 2-litre engine noises, which I'm absolutely fine with. It handles really well. It's very surprising. I suppose it's got quite a bit of torque, so kind of makes sense. Properly fast though. And obviously you just get instant response. There's no kind of like turbo lag or anything that you get with the regular 320i. And the thing is, even if you're in the wrong gear, so say 6th even from 40, plant your foot and you get that electric torque. Look at that, straight up to 70. So no matter what gear you're in, it feels like a fast car, which is really nice. It feels like a much bigger engine. So it's fun on faster roads. It's probably going to be fun on some smaller B roads, but before we do that, let's do the 0 to 60. See what you can do. Claim to do it in 5.8 seconds. It is a wet day today though, so things could get interesting. unfortunately being rear-wheel drive, the time wasn't so great. We did 6.38 seconds, and yeah, it was a very wet day today, so there's not a lot that you can do really to make a rear-wheel drive car go fast in the wet. But, I mean, it still did an okay time, I think. You know, it was the same as like an X530D, or, again, the Stage 1 Ford Fiesta ST. Overall, I think in the dry, it would probably do low 5 seconds, which is pretty impressive, really, when you think about it. Okay then, so obviously a lot of wheel spin on the 0 to 60, but when you're not doing 0 to 60s, that makes it quite a good fun car to drive. It means you can feel it really moving around. It's a great chassis, this, honestly. And this electric power down a B road means you can get a fair old lick on, to be honest. And get the back end out. Do you know what? I think this might actually be the first plug-in hybrid I've ever driven where I kind of prefer it to just the regular combustion engine counterpart. Okay, can we hit 60 before the corner? Let's go. Bit of wheel spin, short shifted into second. But yeah, easily hit 60 miles an hour still. Properly feisty, this thing. But the damping's good. God, it's properly fast, you know. Properly fast. And it handles really well. Really can't feel the extra weight at all. I know what the car's doing, it's still a 3 Series at the end of the day. It's just coming out of corners. It absolutely flies. If anything, the damping kind of feels a little bit better than a regular 3 Series. But it's that torque. You can be in any gear and it just kind of goes. It's a proper machine, this thing. Whew. Yeah, I mean, this is going to get away from quite a few hot hatches down that road. It's a fast car. And the thing is, in sports mode, the engine's always on, so it's always charging the battery when you're not at full throttle. So you kind of never run out of fun, really. What an interesting car. And do you know what? Surprisingly good. If I wasn't going to buy an M340i, or I needed benefit in kind, by the way, that's kind of the reason you buy this, right? Shut up, BMW. Is to save money on tax. And you do save a lot of money on tax, which, you know, if you've got your own business or you're using this as a company car, I would get this. This is surprisingly good. And even if you don't charge the battery, it'll still do nearly 50 mpg on the motorway, which has really surprised me. Yeah, I think this is the first plug-in hybrid I've ever driven that is better than its petrol-powered counterpart, or just regularly internal combustion engine-powered counterpart. I never thought I would ever say that in my life. You get the benefit of an EV powertrain round town, which means you get a lovely, smooth powertrain. Never miss a gap in traffic. Still economical, even when you don't charge it. That's usually where these things really fall short. And it's still really fun to drive. If anything, it's actually more fun to drive because you've got that extra layer of torque that kicks the back end out. Huh. What a cool car. Genuinely never thought I would say that about a plug-in hybrid, but it's great. It's really good. I'd have this over a 330i, which I never thought I would say. Anyway, as always, if you enjoy content like this, please give us a like, and why not subscribe, as we have got some pretty interesting content coming soon. So make sure you subscribe to see that. There'll be a link in the description down below for this car if you want to have a look at it. There'll also be a link just for our generic website as well. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. My name has, as always, been Tom, and you have, as always, been watching Paragon Cars. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.